Oh, good, 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 good. Today is the day of making quizzes and making videos. um, at any rate, you have a quiz this week. Like I opened it Thursday till Monday. Um, at any rate, try to get it done before you really get heavy involved with the exam. As usual, the quiz covers the reading material that we did, and one of the things was assigned you to read because they're always interesting, is the introduction to the section. In this case, um, the Caribbean area, of which I'm very fond and enjoy the literature a great deal, and wish I could keep up with more of the reading. Um, and especially after going to these conferences in the Caribbean over the last years, got to meet a lot of the people and to visit some places I never thought I would. And one of the things you learn is that most of the population of Latin America, and here we include the Caribbean, Central America, and South America, um, I've tried to choose the readings that deal with minority or non-Western kind of subjects, including the Afro-Caribbean poet from Cuba, Guillen. But one of the things is that one of the misconceptions is what languages are the most popular, or most of the population speaks as their first language, and it's not English or French. It's Spanish, all through South America, and Brazil. You find it is a huge country, and its language is Portuguese. The Spanish and the Portuguese, the French and the English, the Dutch, and even the Germans. Uh, at one time or another, I don't know about the Germans now. I have to look back on that, but certainly the Dutch had colonies at one point or the other throughout the Caribbean and South America. And one of the great leaders, and often evoked um, in terms of the leader of Venezuela, Chavez, uh, brings up the name all the time of Simon Bolivar, um, uh, and Jose de San Martin. Uh, Martin, were they led large areas of Latin America to their independence. The first of the Caribbean islands to get independence, by the way, was Haiti, often not remembered. And Napoleon sent a large army there to get things right, and most of them died from malaria. And it was a great uh, moment, but did not last very long. Excuse me, and we know today Haiti is um, a problem. At any rate, you have other stories to read in there, and one of them is the horse, your horse in the night. And now, this takes place, as will another story, Microbus to El Salvador next week. That one takes where the revolution is going on, and the guerrillas are fighting, usually right-wing military groups. And in Argentina, the military junta murdered were called desaparecidos, the disappeared. And this terminology is also used in not only in Argentina during the military junta, but all throughout Central America in Honduras, and especially in El Salvador and Guatemala, one of the countries I couldn't remember the other day when I was talking about Becca Lamb. And there's where you have the women that you read about, the old women, the grandmothers who would carry signs asking, where are these people? And we find this is the Beto in the story "I'm Your Horse in the Night," which is based on a folk tale. Beto is what the narrator calls her lover, but it's not his actual name, because he doesn't want her to know her name, to protect her, because what he's doing uh, can be deadly to both of them. And whether he gets thrown off a helicopter into the river below or not. This is the sort of magic, realistic part of the story that you know it heightens the emotional content, to be sure, but also the the deadly game that they have to play. Uh, as we say, war often brings out the best and the worst in people. And here, it's in what we would certainly call a non-traditional relationship. Is it all a dream? You know, I like the story because it does deal with a very, very important issue um, of the insurgents, the role of the insurgents, and how their life works. And I like when they come back, when Beto shows up and they dance a little and make love. And they put on Gal Costa. Now, I think there are links to Gal Costa, or you should look her up anyway. She is a famous singer, um, and she's a very, very well known singer. If she is from Brazil, she sings in both Spanish and Portuguese, but she has a beautiful, beautiful voice and adds to the romance of the scene when they're drinking the special liquor. Uh, now, I wanted to notion that, and I mentioned it in the other one. It certainly comes through when you visit a place like Panama. Um, an increasingly major source of income for most island economies is tourism. Not heavy industry, no longer rubber, no longer sugar, and only a couple of the islands have oil, and one of which is Trinidad, and that makes a big difference. But for most of them, it's tourism. In Panama, for instance, you do have the canal, and they're building a whole new um, series of locks so that you can have more of the giant tankers come through. It'll take a few years, but there are a lot of people who from all over the world who retire to places like Panama City. And even when you're going through, like as I did, walking through the old area of Panama City, you find there they're called tourist police, just watching out for people because that money is so very important to these islands. It's more fun to visit there and stay in in a hotel, and then it is to maybe go on a Club Med thing. You're going to get out and see the islands because there's a lot of beauty there. And one of the and there's a lot of controversy too, as we've seen in our other stories. No place is perfect. And in the prose poem "Girl" by Jamaica Kincaid, we do see, as I talked about in the introduction to the week, the mother, gives her doesn't listen to um, the daughter's comments, tells her, here's a way to make a man love you. Here's a way to make a man not love you. But if it doesn't work out, don't worry. Here's how you get rid of a baby. Um, and and she doesn't really go to any lengths to praise the daughter's behavior. Says that you're going to be a slut, basically, if you grow up the way, if the baker won't let you squeeze the loaf. But if you look at that poem, it's not just about what it is to be a woman or a girl, a predefined definition of what you're going to become. But there's a lot of other stuff in there, how to prepare this meal, what not to do, so you don't get red ants all over the place. And also, the mother believes in some superstitions about, look in there and you'll see about birds and things along those lines, spitting. There is a lot packed into that one poem that is a series of breathless uh, yelling at the girl and teaching how to be something that perhaps she doesn't want to grow up to be. You also have a wonderful poem. Well, it's devastating, and it's by Neruda, um, who was, as I noted, the friend of the Allende, the who was elected and then overthrown by Pinochet, and he died not long after. But he writes a lot of beautiful love poetry too, and was a diplomat. And in the United Fruit Company, we talked about the guy in the end, the sort of tongueless whispering, and you have the individual described as a number. And in the United Fruit Company poem, you have something about talking about the reign of the flies. And that refers to, and they're named. You look at the names there, that these are the nasty dictators who ruled the so-called banana republics. And in there you find the whole idea of flies gathered around rotten fruit, and the gases of that, in the bay, as the ships drive off with their booty like pirates. And it's almost a rape of this isle that's, you might think of it as, Central America, those countries, the waste of the woman, and vilely attacked by these people who run the companies. And Anaconda would refer more to Chile, whereas the United Fruit Company is certainly located more in Central America, where the company basically supported these ruthless rulers, all in the name of harmony and good business. You have another story by one of the relatives, Allende, the woman, whose uncle, I think it's her uncle, you can look it up, was the president. And then we have the El Benefactor. I love El Benefactor in this story. And he's, you would think that, he's an Indian, an Indian from the mountains, that he'd come down and really change things in the government. The way that, if you look up Evo from Bolivia, is actually the first Indian elected president of the South American country, and not without great controversy. But El Benefactor fits right in with the neo-colonial ruler. He looks to Europe when he builds his summer palace. It's all with things not from the country. That's where you're looking. Rushdie wrote, made a comment about the empire writes back against what El Benefactor embraces. And so he builds this pretty much unnecessary, if you will, palace, a symbol of his grandeur. And he builds it with what the story calls a dark mineral that flowed from the earth, probably oil. And that, he uses that money that could be used for the people to build this European palace. That Marcy Lieberman, by the way, the name of a very noted photographer of divos, if you will. And in the story, Marcia Lieberman's husband is an ambassador to this El Benefactor's country, and Lieberman's husband despises the country and treats her as an object, to be sure. And she becomes, therefore, engaged with the Indians. And you want to think, this one's kind of a fun, is the way that the woman resembles the Indians in some ways. She loves the country, and ends up very happy doing all the things that she had wanted to do. But she's, in many ways, in the end, even to the benefactor, invisible. Invisible because not of interest to the male-dominated society. Well, we also have poems by Nicholas Guillen. Nicholas Guillen is, I think he died in 1989, and the biography about him was by one of the people who lectured, he gave a talk in Panama, and I will have that. The actual talk is now up on my YouTube page, and if you look at the blog, you'll find a link to there, and I will set up links to all the other conferences you might want to see video by, for instance, Derek Walcott and also Earl Lovelace. Now, we'll read the material from them next week. As we continue for our final week in the Caribbean and South America. Guillen has a poem about his grandfathers. And in there, he says that his two grandfathers watch over him. And one is a conquistador and one is a slave. And the idea is that they're not in conflict. There's good from both. And this is probably one of the areas of the Cuban Revolution that hoped for this kind of assimilation of the white Spanish with the Afro-Caribbeans. Which hasn't really happened as much as the Cubans would want. There are still problems, but he was the exemplar poet and idealized Fidel Castro and more so the hopes of the revolution. That as Che Guevara, you see all over Cuba, Havana, when you go there, that there are sayings that, keep the revolution alive and things along those lines. At any rate, I want to move to the novel real quickly here and talk a little bit about this one. I hope everybody likes this novel as much as you liked the first two we read. Becca Lamb's a little longer. You want to read it, over a 2-week period, and maybe start on our final novel, which is challenging with language and things, but I think you'll like it a lot. This novel is, I think Belize got independence in around 82 when this book was published, and became the first internationally recognized novel from Belize, which is a small country on the Atlantic side of the Central America, and subject, therefore, as most places are on the Atlantic side, to severe hurricanes. As you look at the cover of your book, I think it is of a hurricane. The Pacific side is where all the major cities pretty much are. Panama City and places like that. More gentle there. Now, when the novel opens, Becca Lamb is 14 years old. And Toysey, her good friend, we find out pretty much right away, has died, and that this whole novel turns out to be a wake in the form of young Becca Lamb calls it, she's awake, she's drinking coffee, and so it is kind of a twist on it, because there is no a real wake as there is when the grandmother dies, and Becca goes to the wake, and we back at that point Toysey's not dead in the retrospective look here. We know, but you'll find out why and how and things along those lines. Obviously, in the beginning, Becca has won a contest, and you're going to learn more about that. But this whole book will catch up with itself as we return at the time of the hurricane that will assault the island. And you're going to meet along the way some very interesting characters like Lilla. And we find that Lilla Lamb's father, we learn, was a half-white, half-Bakra man. Bakra being white. That happens a lot in the area like Belize. And you have the whole kind of thing in the Caribbean between the whites, which would be the more the colonial, and the black, and then the mixture, which in our book are called Creoles. And Becca's father is a Creole, and so Becca is as well, and that's and there are many different groups in there. You'll find that this is all over the Caribbean. There are Indians, there are Hmong, there are, it depends on the island. It depends on the island of what kind of racial mixture we have. But we also have the politics here. You have the grandmother who talks about the PIP, which is real, And she talks about Pritchard and Gladson. And you can Google Pritchard and Gladson because they're real people. And they're imprisoned by the colonial authorities um, for a variety of crimes. But I want you to know that the whole movement for independence starts early. But Guatemala had claims to Belize. And so the Spanish-speaking Guatemala, and then Belize, the only surviving uh, colony that the British had in Central America. They get independence in '82, a lot later than a lot of the others, and that one of the reasons was concerns of what would happen in the future. But Belize turns now into one of the favorite places for Americans to start retiring. Well, one of the other things here in our story is that Toysey's mother, we find that Toysey is older than Becca, is a senior, and she's smart, and she's quite attractive. And although Becca at the time is 14, she's getting the attention of men. She's physically developed. The mother, though, has left Belize to try to make some money, make a living, and she sends things back when she can. She lives in the United States. This happens a lot in the Caribbean. The Caribbean families are often broken with the women. This is true throughout the Caribbean. The women run the families. A lot of the times you'll find single families run by mothers because the fathers are off working in the United States. Or years ago in early 1900s, they were all thousands and thousands and thousands of them went to Panama uh, to work. And so you have an interesting dynamic that's reflected in our novel. And the question is, what's going to happen with all those races, the different peoples, the Guats, as they're called, the Spanish, the more Spanish from Mexico, the Bacra, the Creoles, and of course the Caribs. And that's and that mix-up is one can see as a kind of a in reflected in Becca's conflicted self about who she is and what's going to happen in the future. Now Becca is a young girl. Oh, by the way, with respect to the families, I mean, Becca fails, lies to her parents about it, um, and apparently not roll that eloquently. Becca, feels like when she goes back to school, she's going to have the ribbon on that says she's still in the grade that she should have passed. And so she feels like any adolescent would that the world's looking at her. And I like Mr. Gordillo, the Mexican grocer, who works very hard. And what he tells Becca is something interesting. He says that she's lucky to have two parents at home. And Bill does everything he can to support the family. And he's made, as you're going to find out, he's made some considerable sacrifices, and he works for the British to do it. And that has problems because, of course, Grandma, his mother, is very much involved in the PIP. The grandmother, I can't remember if it's his mother or not. It just slipped my mind today, but the other grandmother dies. But according to Becca, and I use the word authentic when I finally meant an inauthentic, but what he does call her, that hurts even more than the belt whipping that she gets, is to be called a phony, and so she's mortified that her father would call her that. Now, one of the other conflicts has to do, of course, with the who we are in Belize, but also where you take your lead from, and we see that certain people just idealize the British. As I say, the Empire writes back, and that the source of identification and reification is the empire and the source of London, even when you live in one of these islands. And you find that Becca's mother reads the magazines, and she takes special pride in the garden from growing a very British thing, roses. uh, and uh, and she wants, and the whole thing of ironing Becca's hair, but Lila's, in here, with the father and the mother. Uh, they try to side with the British because, I mean, that's where the father works. That how is he even able to support them to the point that they might put in an actual bathroom, and that generates rivalries with the neighbors. So that's one of the reasons the father cuts down the bougainvillea. Where the neighbors were complaining because it's going over the fence. He cuts it down. He uses the excuse, because Becca loves that plant tree, that he cuts it down to punish her for failing in school and lying. But pay attention, because that bougainvillea, which is a native plant, is significant for the story, as is the fact that roses are not an indigenous plant in Belize. They are there if you want to have a very British garden. Now, one of the things that they do um, every summer, and this is where we're coming to the conflict, part of the conflict with Becca, is that she adores Toisey. And in the past, Toisey's very poor, but Bill and Lila let her come with them when they go to St. George's Key uh, for a little island off Belize for vacation, and they have they rent a place there and they have a good time. And Becca was used to having Toisey all to herself, but now, um, although they still are there, although she feels betrayed by Toisey. The beach that used to be so fun, she gets steps on a Portuguese man o' war and gets stung, jellyfish, all these bad things, and she starts berating the sea. But she does, talk about how she wants to grow up to be a politician, Becca does. But she's upset. Toisey upsets Becca because she goes to meet Emilio at night in that very interesting graveyard, where we find that that's the graveyard's indicative the fight that they had, and it wasn't just the British soldiers; it was the Creoles and other people that defeated the Spanish, and that's their day of celebration. And that what do you call it? Graveyard is where Becca with Toisey and Amelia go at night, and the grandmother says something about that. She's gonna get pregnant by trying to um, improve herself to raise her color, as it were. Um, that there's part of the conflict in the story, and I mean, everything. Becca's not interested in boys, and she claims she's never going to get pregnant. I mean, but when she goes to the wake, she says something that really upsets her grandmother. On the island, the Mr. Hartley, he is one of the Bakara, the whites who, for their vacation, want to go to England, and people had stoned his house. So you get the feeling there's the political discontent is percolating amongst the people. And Mr. Hartley supported what was called the West Indies Federation, which the grandmother knows was a manner in which the British tried to maintain control over the islands in terms of trade and things like that. It wasn't meant to, in any way, bring independence to the people. They would just have a different kind of suppression, if you will. So the people don't like Mr. Hartley because he's uppity, and he's not supportive of the kind of what we would call populist vision that the grandmother and others have. Now, so you see that, unlike Bill and Lila, Becca's parents, Granny Ivory supports the PIP, which is the People's Independence Party, I believe. And they're not favoring the British. And of course, Bill works for the British, and if word got out that he was, supporting the PIP, he could lose his job and all that he's worked for to help with Becca with her education, thus his ire. He gives, but notice he doesn't take the belt to the little girl, and of this kind of corporal punishment is commonplace. Um, and he feels really terrible that the belt buckle uh, uh, cuts her, but he does it not because she failed, but because she lied about it. That made her a phony, and that's, as you find out, is Bill's real point there. You lied. And then eventually, of course, she's going to be let back to school, because, as Bill says, the women won't let me sleep until I do this. But he wants her to succeed. And the mother gives Becca a significant gift at the wake. She gives her a pen and an exercise book and tells her every time you feel a lie coming on, which is quite often, to write in the book. And in my own way of looking at it, I see this as the birth of the author. I mean, Becca's very imaginative. She comes up with all these things. She imagines that she was a great speaker. She doesn't do well in school, and you'll find out why in the next section. One of the things, she has a big mouth. But she will go back to school. But here is, a lie is a fiction. Fictio is to make things up that aren't real. Fiction, and that's what we're reading here, based upon things that happened, to be sure, but nonetheless, Becca will learn a lesson, and it'll take some time for that to filter through. A couple other things, and we have the Caribs, who live in a very, very small area, and they're the ones that follow the real African traditions of things like Carnival, established in Trinidad, and it's big on a number of islands, and of course in New Orleans. And you'll see that people aren't so sure about them, and I believe that she says she's going to marry one. Becca does. The Caribs, though, they're descendants of escaped African slaves and South American Caribbeans. Now, that's what the Caribbean is named after, and almost all those people, unless a lot of them escaped, a lot of the slaves, of course, intermarrying and whatnot, and we come up with the Caribs, which are blacks, but a lot of them related in some ways sometimes to the original Caribs, who were pretty much extirpated by the colonial forces. There's no island that has a population of indigent, in yeah, of these people, unlike places like Panama, where you can go to meet these Indian tribes. Brazil is another example. At any rate, those are the people that they mean when they say Caribs, blacks. But a lot of them escaped the islands and came to Belize, and intermarried with Belizeans, who weren't Belizeans, right? They were just natives. Now, one of the other things that's coming up is you're going to find out, well, that Toisey has a problem that's going to be related to what in the end kills her. Now, and according to the people at the wake for the grandmother who dies while Bill and they're all in, or great grandmother dies when they're on the island, and Bill rushes off, and there's a wake, which is very important in the tradition. Toysey's not there, and they're talking about someone who wants to eat green mangoes and salt. And green mangoes and salt, women take very, very seriously, because that is an indicator of pregnancy. And so at that point, Becca's looking around, and there's the fear that Toysey's pregnant. What we realize, maybe Becca doesn't at the time, but there's the pineapple-faced girl who's not much older than Becca, who may be even the same age, has already had children. And to Becca's mind, to have the children before, marriage even, or, as you'll see, a career, is a form of slavery. But this will change too. as the story goes around. Not that Becca's going to get pregnant. That's not what I'm saying. But in fact, that Becca's going to learn a lot. Uh, so by the end of the novel, not quite as naive as she is now. But at any rate, I will do a good job on the quiz, do a good job on the exam, be thinking about your presentations, and have a good week.